You're here because you want to get informed, maybe delve into something complex without, getting totally lost. Today, we're plunging into the world of the artist Bob Camblin.
And it's a really fascinating plunge, actually, because we have so many different angles on Camblin. His own thoughts, like captured in quotes, biographical details, how critics saw his work,
Right.
even a visual exploration of one of his paintings, and personal stories from people who actually knew him.
Exactly. Think of it as like assembling a really intricate puzzle. Our goal here, in this deep dive, is to pull out those key elements of Camblin's artistic vision.
Uh-huh.
Those core ideas about his process, his inspirations, the surprising turns in his life, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and those moments that make you go, aha, now I see the connection.
Okay, so where do we begin with understanding this guy? Probably best to start at the beginning, right? His roots, the early stuff that shaped him.
Makes sense. Camblin was born in Oklahoma, 1928,
Mm.
and it sounds like he was just immersed in art from day one.
Yeah, apparently both his parents were artists, so he was exposed to all sorts of techniques, different mediums, right, from childhood.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is his upbringing in Ponca City. This was during the Marland oil boom and then its decline.
Ah, okay.
So he saw this incredible wealth, the grandeur of the Marland estate, but also the fallout and that iconic pioneer woman statue there. Well, there's even a possible personal connection.
Really? How so?
Some think his mother's initials might actually appear in some of his later works, possibly referencing that statue. It's subtle, but it suggests those early visual societal impressions really stuck with him.
You can almost picture it, can't you? That backdrop of boom and bust.
Yeah.
And then something seemingly small but maybe significant, seeing The Wizard of Oz in 1938.
Oh, yeah. That kind of vivid, imaginative storytelling, that can definitely spark something, especially in a kid's mind.
For sure. And it wasn't just big environmental things, right?
Yeah.
He formed a really important friendship early on.
Absolutely. Forrest Harrisberger, they met in high school art class, and that friendship lasted over 66 years. Just incredible.
66 years. Wow. That says a lot.
It really does. Then, like many of his generation, life took a turn towards military service, Air Force Reserve, activated for the Korean War.
Right.
But that experience, it actually opened a door, the GI Bill.
Ah, the GI Bill, which led him to art school.
Exactly. Kansas City Art Institute, KCAI, and guess who he reconnected with there?
Harrisberger.
Yep. And there's this great story about him at KCAI. He was just this voracious reader, apparently read books during class.
Wait, seriously.
Seriously, it just shows that kind of fierce independence, that curiosity he had.
Definitely not your typical student. And that curiosity went way beyond art, it seems. Influences like Emerson, the I Ching.
Haiku, haiga, yeah. That focus on simplicity, finding the profound in the everyday. You really see that reflected later in his own work, that kind of distilled observation.
And that detail about the Air Force Reserve, a free flight every month. Kind of a cool perk for a young artist.
Isn't it? Just adds another little layer to his early life. Hints of a bigger world opening up.
So then came Italy. The Fulbright. That sounds like a huge turning point.
Oh, absolutely transformative. He was, by all accounts, just mesmerized. The old masters, the impressionists.
Italy must have been overwhelming.
Totally. And Venice, especially, he called it his Emerald City, clearly ignited something powerful in him.
But it wasn't just the famous galleries like the Uffizi.
No, not just the beauty. He was also deeply affected by places like the Capuchin catacombs in Palermo, those mummified figures.
Oh, wow. Intense.
Yeah, he called them his mummies. They gave him these abstract, figurative shapes that just stayed in his memory, apparently. It's amazing how those different experiences feed into the art, isn't it?
It really is. And speaking of unexpected connections, his painting The Birth of Venus, it's a tribute to a Houston radio station, KPFT.
Yeah. It shows how connected he was to contemporary stuff, but always putting his own unique spin on things. And then his Flora painting.
From Botticelli's Primavera.
Right, but packed with hidden stuff. Hearts, electrons, apparently a smile to rival the Mona Lisa. He loved embedding things.
It really highlights that playful, multi-layered quality in his work. He wasn't just copying. He was like remixing and adding his own secrets.
Exactly. And this early period, he got significant recognition. Shows at the Chicago Art Institute, Rome, Milan, a traveling show.
So success came relatively early then.
It seems so. Yet, interestingly, he didn't dive straight into being a full-time artist, had a brief stint as a map maker for TWA.
A map maker. That's unexpected.
Isn't it? A little practical detour before he really committed to teaching.
And that teaching career was pretty extensive. Ringling, University of Illinois, Detroit, Utah.
And eventually Rice University in Houston. Yeah, all that time in academia, engaging with students, it must have sharpened his own thinking, too.
Which sort of leads us to a point where his perspective started shifting,
Mhm.
maybe, and his art evolving again. It sounds like Salt Lake City wasn't quite the right fit.
Yeah, that seems fair to say. He found the attitude towards art there, well, he called it Philistine, a bit stifling.
Mm,
And that was actually a big reason he moved to Rice in Houston. He felt it would be more open, to contemporary ideas.
okay. And it wasn't just location, right? His views on the art world itself were sharpening. Galleries, museums.
Oh, yeah. He felt they often expected too much from each other, had unrealistic ideas, and he personally struggled with the commercial side, this whole painting for money thing.
The story about him refusing payment.
Right. And that patron who had to encase the money in glass, it just shows how principled or maybe stubborn he was about it.
He clearly wanted his art seen on his own terms, creating a whole environment for exhibitions, avoiding comparisons.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It really is. Suggests he wanted total immersion for the viewer. No distractions, just his world.
And his philosophy of faith in good work, kind of grounding.
Yeah, like a stabilizing force in the chaos of the art world, believing in the value of the process itself.
I like that. He also had that idea about turning obstacles into opportunities, right?
Mhm.
The jars of water in paintings.
Exactly. Turning stumbling blocks into stepping stones. Such a powerful metaphor for resilience.
Then we get the scarecrows in 67,
Sure.
inspired by Ginter Grass.
Yeah, dog years. But they weren't just, rural scenes. They maybe symbolized renewal, the hastening of spring. And those themes evolved.
Into myths, legends.
Lobster shells, puppets, empty larva shells, all hinting at metamorphosis, transformation. Really fascinating progression.
And the later scarecrow drawings, with the writing on them, almost like camouflage.
Kind of. Playing with words and images, maybe questioning which one dominates. It reminds you of Tom Wolfe's The Painted Word, that whole debate.
Right, so the text could be clues or just shapes.
Potentially both. He seemed to want the viewer to really work at it, like solving a puzzle, maybe discovering something about themselves in the process. He even included extra data problems, codes, and traps.
Sounds like guerrilla warfare, an unusual way of seeing things. Using ambiguity, hidden meanings.
Exactly, disrupting that visually saturated, word-heavy culture. And his ambition, wanting to remake Goya in 20th century terms, that's bold.
Wow, questioning reality even more than the surrealists, maybe?
Perhaps. And you see that evolution from his earlier social protest art in the 50s that shifted into combining social realism, depicting everyday life with non-objectivity, trying to capture the inner world of symbols,
Huh.
inspired by Cremoni, Etruscan figures.
So after Italy, the influence of Byzantine art, late medieval, the old masters,
Yeah.
that led to big drawings.
Yeah, large-scale drawings as finished pieces, not just sketches. And interestingly, he built corrections right into them, even early on.
Then in the 60s, he tried to merge Hugo van der Gogh's poetic feel with Goya's emotional intensity.
Right. Using applied paper, letting it age, adding texture. The series of masks came out of that period.
Okay, so then Houston in the 70s. That seems like a really fertile period.
Absolutely. He brought all these influences together and had this, quote, mind-blowing realization
Which was?
that subjective, symbolic, even decorative art could become mystical, could tap into deeper inner states.
And he was incredibly productive then. Painting, drawing, sculpture.
Caricature, yeah. All sorts of styles. And the work from that time is just loaded with hidden meanings, secrets. You need Freud, De Chirico, maybe Grunewald to decode some of it.
And those recurring images. Puppets, scarecrows, skulls, murky water.
Definitely potential links to writers like Kazantzakis and Grass there in that kind of symbolism.
Then the 80s saw drawings and watercolors intertwining more.
Yeah, hinting at things just beyond clear perception, camouflaged images.
Mhm.
You really had to look past the obvious to see the subtle draftsmanship.
And sometimes people didn't find the hidden images for decades.
Incredible, isn't it? Just shows the depth he was working with.
Okay, let's dig into some of his core philosophical ideas. The concepts driving the art.
Well, there's that great quote about sticking with common sense, but also enjoying miracles, science, and magic, hoping for a bright gray area in between.
I like that, a balanced curiosity.
Exactly. And his idea that the sixth sense is senza dubio, without a doubt. Trusting intuition, that inner knowing.
Also, find something in nature that completes you and then surrender. That's quite profound.
It is. Letting go of control, connecting with something larger. And his core artistic approach, the light is all you need.
The end is to evolve by doing the best you can. The means is to amplify what you're doing and believe. It's so concise.
Beautifully put, isn't it? And he stressed balance, patience, freedom, silence, all crucial for maintaining a grip on reality somehow.
His definition of art evolved too, didn't it?
Yeah.
From not just images to something more essential.
Yeah, art for life's sake or art for my sake or art for survival's sake, it became much more personal, fundamental.
And the simple idea of stepping off the train of thought, just consciously pausing.
So important for creativity, right? Breaking those mental loops. And his thoughts on communication, quite sharp.
That arguing or agreeing doesn't equal communicating.
Precisely. You might learn something, but did you connect? And his connection to nature just shines through.
The descriptions of leaves, sun-warmed air, colors and shadows, they're almost like haiku.
They really are. Such keen observation. He even had funny thoughts on arguing with pessimists versus optimists.
And that question about perception diminishing with distance, is it our eyes, our mind, relativity, just constantly questioning?
Right. And his take on change revolution versus evolution, with the balance being internal, that's deep.
Then those metaphors, the fish trapped by tides, wanting to be a fly shining in the sun.
So vivid, they stick with you. And the references to Icarus, mythology, recurring themes about human nature.
Later on, he seemed to grapple with art's role in a consumer society, didn't he?
Yeah, the shift from contemplation to shock value, concept over craft, the potential for participatory art. He's really thinking about where things were heading.
His ecology of art idea, it's fascinating. Artists doing their own thing, even if unsuccessful, being vital for the whole system.
It's a great analogy, isn't it? Like biodiversity argues powerfully for artistic freedom. Even for seemingly self-indulgent work, it might be necessary.
He also wrote about images dissolving, the struggle against chaos, the difficulty of capturing truth. Very honest about his own process.
Acknowledging the influence of time, diverse sources, hoping his intentions changed, and admitting you can't just tell someone something, they need the experience.
His rules are great too. There are no mistakes. You are doing the best you can. Very freeing.
Totally. And playfully taking apart pride goeth before a fall, looking at cause and effect differently.
The hologram metaphor bits arguing instead of cooperating.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
It is, and asking. First chaos, then order. Or the other way around. Plus his hologram idea, we're all connected, becoming clearer together.
Holistic, yeah. Approaching real time, seeing the universe as finite or infinite patterns.
Connecting to solipsism, not as crazy, but as misunderstanding interconnectedness. It's complex stuff.
Living in past, present, future. All driven by the dream of understanding how it works. Poetic.
It really is. And the hawk and snake metaphor for different paths, with that insight, the path of least resistance is complex for humans.
So true. Always returning to cycles, beginning, ending, the next step, that continuous flow.
And those enigmatic quotes like, art is not in some far-off place, it's immediate, inherent.
It's amazing how his thinking connects with others. Alan Watts on interconnectedness.
William James on belief creating fact. Sartre's being is the inescapability of thought. He was clearly reading widely.
The Zen proverb about knowing versus telling. Bergson on intuition, Teilhard de Chardin on connection.
Lamarck on habits forming second nature. Koestler on creative courage. Jung on imagination and order from chaos.
John Fowles the Magus on self-acceptance. Dostoevsky on hidden fears. Salinger on the artist's focus.
Updike on art giving breathing room. Barth on assigned value. Durrell on artist compromise. Huxley on inconsistency. It's this incredible tapestry of ideas feeding his work.
Okay, let's pivot to a specific piece. Pale Horse with Riders. It seems to pull a lot of these threads together.
It really does. Visually, it's striking, isn't it? Skeletal rider, pale horse, those cherub-like figures.
Against that dark background, flames, skulls, the big orange sun or halo.
Very dramatic. From a Zen view, you could see it as about impermanence, death's inevitability, the futility of attachment, the cherubs maybe innocence or the soul's journey.
And the I Ching connection, hexagram 23, splitting apart.
Right. Decay and renewal. The pale horse obviously echoes the biblical apocalypse destruction, but also rebirth. The cherubs, the sun, hints of new beginnings, even amidst the darkness.
So fundamentally, it's about the cycle of life and death. Creation from destruction.
That seems to be the core, yeah. Light from darkness. Artistically, it connects to a long history. Durer's Four Horsemen, the medieval dance macabre.
Right, the dance of death.
And the style, the expressive brushwork, dark palette, it has that romantic feel, the sublime and the macabre.
So it's a meditation on mortality, change, cycles, bridging different traditions.
Exactly. And that YouTube video, The Cycle of Endings, really reinforces that. Accepting death as part of the flow, renewal after decay. It asks the viewer, like we're asking you now, what endings are you resisting?
Hmm. Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, let's touch on Camblin himself.
Yeah.
His persona, his legacy. He was well known, but still kind of enigmatic.
Absolutely. Widely recognized, huge body of work, but it's scattered, and he himself remained elusive. Controversial, iconoclastic style, but deeply respected by peers. His work is highly sought after, often fetches high prices. Scarcity plays a role there.
And that decision in '76 to just leave academia and become nomadic, dedicated purely to art, that cemented the enigma, didn't it?
It really did. Traveling the world, drawing inspiration. And the book, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, gives us a peek into that private world drawings. Musings never meant for public view.
A rear window.
Yeah. His art kind of defies easy criticism or commercial logic. It aims for something deeper, speaks to the soul, maybe.
But he did get critical recognition over the years. Moser, Freed, the Texas Overview.
Oh, yes. They tracked his evolution, his innovation, like combining drawing and watercolor. And he pioneered that style, muchas volantes, in the 70s.
Drawing from data, surrealism, using optical illusions involving the viewer.
Exactly. And his collaborations were key, too, with Earl Staley, Joe Tate, B&E Productions, holding firm, challenging norms, focusing on process, even working anonymously sometimes.
And later with Nancy Giordano on the Muchas Volantes.
Right. Pieces like the Big Owl series or Descent from the Cross show his technical mastery and that potent symbolism. His legacy is really about inspiring, challenging, pushing boundaries.
The quotes from people who knew him paint such a picture. Pete Gershon calling him a mystical trickster figure.
Earl Staley on their friendship, Camblin teaching him so much. Penny Serling on his curiosity, love of collaboration. Carolyn Farb on how autobiographical his art was.
And Staley's personal story is incredible. Sharing studios, Camblin's storytelling, his sudden departure from teaching, the nomadic life, and that final kind of uncomfortable visit to Houston.
Yeah, describing Camblin's last studio as a wizard's den filled with odd objects, his Mr. Peanut persona embracing anonymity.
Wow.
It's all part of the complex picture. Even the effort to organize a show after his death speaks volumes.
It really does. A rich, multifaceted character emerges.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the big takeaways for you thinking about Camblin?
I think just the sheer evolution of his journey. Fearless exploration, the way he wove philosophy into the art, drawing from so many diverse places, his collaborations, his challenging of conventions, and yeah, that lingering sense of enigma.
And hopefully for you listening, there's been some aha moments, seeing those connections, art, philosophy, life, through Camblin's unique perspective.
So, maybe a final thought to leave you with. How might embracing paradox, questioning convention like Camblin did? How might that open up new understanding in your own life? Perhaps this has sparked an interest in seeing his art or exploring Zen, the I Ching, Emerson, things that fueled him.
We really hope this dive has given you a valuable shortcut to being, well, genuinely informed about a truly fascinating artist and the intriguing world he created. Until next time.